some sad news in the running world. Yeah, Dick Fosbury passed away a few days ago. 1968 gold medalist in the high jump, was a trailblazer in the event, came up with the Fosbury flop, which completely revolutionized the event. He had just an amazing legacy in the sport, and it transcended track and field. People use the Fosbury flop as just an example of innovation, an example of tackling a problem in a different way. After 1972, every gold medalist since has done the Fosbury flop. It's the natural way to do things, and it's funny to think about a time pre-Dick Fosbury when that wasn't the case. And yeah, just leaves a huge legacy. There's very few people who completely change the sport. And I was also thinking about this, Gordon. High jump is such a universal thing. You don't even need to be a track person to be curious about high jump. Hey, how high can you jump over that bar?
Yeah.
And he came up with, people were doing it one way for years and years and years, and he came up with a completely different and more effective way to do something that a lot of people had thought about. It wasn't an abstract skill. It was high jumping, and he came up with a solution that now looks and seems obvious, but at the time was totally different, a different path.
Yeah, what was the year when he came up with the flop?
Well, he started doing it in high school, out in Medford, Oregon, and then in that AP article, it is interesting. They bring up that doctors were writing him letters, warning him against it. That other people would do it, and they would start breaking their necks. That's how dangerous it seemed.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was a time when the high jump had no pit on the other side.
Sawdust. Yeah, exactly. And people were doing the scissors kick and the Western roll and everything like that. Obviously, you have to have the mat in place to do it. But even with the mat, in 68, people were looking at him funny when he was doing this, going into a mat, and other people were scissoring over. Nowadays, you look at the people scissoring, like, what is this?
Well, you see when Mutaz does the scissor, like in the warm-up, you're like, damn, he's scissoring like 220, and like, he's one of the best. Yeah, it makes me think, like, do you think there's any other potential game-changing, innovative way of approaching a different event in track and field? Like, is there someone who's like going to learn to throw a shot put better than the typical putting the ball right here underneath the chin?
Well, because...
Or a different way to jump over a hurdle?
It would need to be something dramatic to have this level of impact, because it's not just, spin versus glide in the shot put ring. He's literally changing the orientation. Like,
it'd be like throwing it like underhand or something.
Yeah, within the rules. And you look at the long jump, there's a little tweak here and there to different people's technique, but no one was coming up in the 1960s being, you're doing this dramatically wrong. Yeah. Here, I have the math equation to show you. Let's do it. The only one I could think of would be maybe somewhere down the line with pole vault, just because there's so many components and different things at play. But Mondo seems to be rolling pretty well and fully optimized. But
maybe there's a new way to get into the blocks.
Yeah, a new way to start.
New way to start out of the blocks.
Yeah, and
like you start with your elbows on the ground or something.
There are these people in sports, and Fosbury is one of them. Probably one of the most famous ones, though. Who, you take something completely simple, and then people think it's almost, now underhand free throws didn't catch on, but there's a lot of research that says underhand free throws are actually more effective. People just don't do it because they think it looks funny, and they don't want to do it. But I wasn't around in 1968, but I get the feeling that's how he was looked at when he was competing. And like, what? Like, you're an oddity.
It's like the bowler who bowls with two hands instead of one.
Exactly. Yeah, all these little things. But in track, since so many of the events are foundational movements, we've already thought about them.
Yeah.
We came into the world throwing and jumping and running. We weren't coming into the world with a bowling ball in an alley. That's sort of a more abstract thought. So more people have looked at it and analyzed it over time, which leaves fewer opportunities for tweaks, which is why it just is so incredible to me that he's like, nope, it's not the way to do it.
Yeah.
Let me show you how to do it.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, even all the tweaks that Ilya Kipchoge put into getting under 2 hours in the marathon.
Yeah.
At the end of the day,
one foot in front of the other.
It was 1 foot in front of the other. He didn't skip the marathon and be like, that's actually, if you skip, you run faster.
Yeah.
He was like, no, he knew the most. optimize all of the other athletic feats up until high jump, and now high jump is now optimized. There's nothing else really to optimize.
Yeah. All in the game in the chat says hitch kick in the long jump, the closest thing. And I thought about that. There's different techniques, but in general, you're taking off one foot, you're landing in the sand. Again, little different approaches, but it's not as dramatic of a change as what Fosbury did. Different techniques win out over time because people say, okay, this is the better method. But that I compare more to glide versus spinning, which was a big change or big, two different options on how to accomplish the same feat, which is throw the ball as far as you can. But this was just so much different. And you're right, it was predicated on having a mat to land on. So there was some technology required, but I just like reading the stories about Fosbury and how he came up with it. And I'm going to go at this angle, and I only need to get part of my body over at a time, and then I can slink it over. It just there's a reason why people are taking such note of him passing, and there's a reason why so many people in other fields talk about Dick Fosbury and what he did, because it's a universal thing.
Rest in peace, 76.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, passed.
Long life.
76. Yeah, I mean, he was still speaking a lot on track and field, attending competitions and stuff, and leaves just a massive legacy. He's featured in car commercials, and there was an Avicii song with basically his story as the video element to the music video. So he's not a track person. He transcended track, which is hard to do.
Also, the fact that his last name is Fosbury and it goes so well with the word flop.
Okay, read that quote. The quote he gave in that AP story is epic too.
What's the quote?
I'll find it for you, because a reporter in Medford gave the name Fosbury flop when he was covering him in high school. And Fosbury liked the name. He says, here's the quote: "It's poetic. It's alliterative. It's a conflict." Pretty cool, right? Because flop, the guy was saying, it's like you look like a fish. But it's not seen as in a negative way. It's like, oh my gosh, this guy just completely changed the game.